Chris Pieper from Taos, and he's been a farmer and a teacher and a business owner. Melinda has a farm in Taos, and Micah has a farm in Taos too. All farming in Taos and a lot of programs. So these people have been doing this for a while, and I think they're going to be really helpful. So think of questions, be asking questions, and I want this to be a whole discussion with this room. So I just wonder if there's anything you have off the bat to say about that.
Was this a Taos conspiracy?
No. You're the ones that showed up. What you might say, like, are you making money? Are you, or what would you do? What do you think the best ways people can make it sustainable for themselves to be producing something in their garden, in their backyard?
I wouldn't mind having a little brief description of what each of them are doing, like 3 or 4 sentences or something to differentiate them from one another.
So, I'm only half of the equation because my wife is there too. And we have a business in town, and that's where we generate most of our income. Is not from the farm, but our goats do generate income. And so what we do is, we milk our goats, and then we make cheddar, the soft goat cheese. And we've been selling to primarily one restaurant in town for about 14 years.
About 10 years, but we sold to a few other restaurants as well.
A few other restaurants.
But it's a farm-to-table restaurant.
And then we sell to individuals. And that more than pays for just the feed. I think originally we wanted to just pay for the feed, the care of goats. And now we do generate some income from the goats, but it's not our primary source of income. So we're an example of a farmer that has to have a job to support their farming practice.
Is it primarily the goats that you do, or do you have?
We also have we have a vegetable garden. And we've been experimenting with growing some grain. My wife and I make sourdough bread, and so we've been grinding wheat. So we've experimented a little bit with grain, but it's mostly the goats. And we have chickens too.
We've also sold berries to restaurants. Not in the last couple of years. We need to replant our berry patch, but that is something that can also be a decently lucrative thing to sell.
Oh yeah. If you want to talk about berries can definitely generate good income.
What kind of berries do you grow?
Raspberries. And if you want to go into detail later, we can talk about what varieties do well in this bioregion, because we're in basically the same.
Where are you located again?
In Taos.
In Taos.
Yes.
And what's the elevation?
7,600.
Okay.
But the San Luis Valley is a bit colder, for sure. We don't get the low temperatures that you do, but it's pretty similar in terms of precipitation and soil type and general climate. So.
Well, I'll come back to the berries later.
Yes.
I'll let the other ladies introduce themselves, but thank you.
So my name's Melinda Bateman, and I own and operate Morningstar Farm, and I've been selling commercially. I started very, very small as really a home gardener 28 years ago, and then farming has been my primary source of income probably for about 20 years. We've gone through several different iterations. When we were quite small, we sold primarily to restaurants, and then we started getting a little bit bigger, and we sold at the farmer's market. And then I got bold and started the first CSA in Taos, which was actually the second CSA in the state at the time, or maybe the third, sorry. And the farm got quite a lot larger for a while with the CSA, and then I found the CSA to be quite exhausting after about, 14 or 15 years. So I closed that up and started trying to reinvent myself. I'm still trying to reinvent myself. But currently we have a large planting for us. Our farm is very small. It should be called a micro farm or something, or a large size home garden. But if we're careful, we can generate, actual net value of somewhere around $30,000 an acre. It's a lot of work, but rotating through certain crops that are profitable for us, particularly root crops, the garlic, and then very dense plantings of greens like salad mix, arugula, mizuna, those Oreo greens, and some herbs. If we're careful, we can generate that kind of income. It's like I said, a lot of labor. And I'm getting to the point where I'm not so interested in doing that much labor anymore. But that's been our legacy.
And Melinda, will you say how many acres you're growing on?
Right now, we probably have 1.5 acres in production, and that's about our farm. The bottom part of our farm really isn't very usable. It's quite sloped, and there are people that, I'm not sure how many years ago, but with the acequia, the flood irrigation, when you flood irrigate a very sloped piece of property, of course all the topsoil washes away. So the bottom part of our farm that's sloped like that really doesn't have good soil. And so we've started, like, our solar array is down there, and our bathhouse is down there, and our outhouse is down there, and Jay lives down there. So it's like this strip of property that we kind of cover up with other things than farming.
And you're outside of, or inside, around house also?
I'm actually right next door to Chris at 7,600 feet. Or we could just stick our property back together.
We're neighbors.
Yeah, our property was stuck together at some point in history, but now it's not.
Well, at least you could be friends. That's
Yeah, we talk stories over the fence sometimes.
Hey, now I'm starting to wonder, is this really a conspiracy? Because we're neighbors. I just realized that we actually all work together at a small Waldorf-inspired school that we started in Taos.
That's right.
That was like 31 years ago.
Yeah.
This is really a coincidence, it's not a conspiracy.
All our teachers, yeah.
Yeah, 98.
All right, my name is Micah Roseberry, and I currently have the farmhouse, cafe, and bakery in Taos. I have been growing in northern New Mexico for 35 years, and I did start farming when I was 17. I wasn't raised to be a farmer, but I found farming, and it was my delight, and it's a lot of...
Closer to your mouth.
It was a lot of hard work. But I'm currently, besides having the cafe, I'm the executive director of a nonprofit, IRA, Agriculture, Implementation, Research, and Education. And we are working right now forming a farmer-rancher co-op and with a farm-to-school effort to get local food and local grass-fed and finished beef to the school on the USDA reimbursable plate. And in my restaurant, we do serve 1,000 meals a day out to 2 charter schools under that USDA reimbursable meal. And so we are proving the point that you can be local, organic, and feed our children and have food sovereignty. And so that's kind of my real excitement, and there is some profitability in that. I also was the co-founder of Cerro Vista Farm, which has been a CSA since 2000. I think it has 250 members last year and this year, and it's 6 acres of vegetables, and it's the largest vegetable production farm in northern New Mexico, which tells you how small the farms are there. But that's like a lot of intensive vegetable production. I currently have like 3/4 of an acre outside the farmhouse where we are aggregating with other farmers in our own production, 150 member CSA for the second year that was geared up and magnified by COVID to try to help farmers who lost their markets when restaurants closed and when the farmers market didn't open on time. And so, yeah, that's the beginning of my experience.
Where's your restaurant in Taos? What's in Melinda?
It's in Taos. It's called Farmhouse Cafe and Bakery.
House?
Farmhouse.
Farmhouse.
Yeah, and it's actually in the Overland Ranch kind of complex, like right off of the highway towards the Taos Mountain when you're like driving down. And love to welcome you all. We have really good food. We support local farmers and ranchers, and bake everything and cook everything from scratch.
It is, it's fantastic. And it's organic too. Are you the only organic restaurant?
No, I think Manzanita and the Love Apple would be the, I'd say.
I don't think everything though is organic like it is at your place. I mean, they have a really strong emphasis on it, but at Micah's, all the food's organic.
Mm-hmm. Except the salt. It's from the sea.
So how many people here have a garden? And how many want to make it viable for yourself?
I'm going to start with containers. So I don't have to worry about the deer. It's on upper deck and I ran it. So.
But do you want to monetize your garden, or you just want it to be sustainable for you?
Just for me.
You want to grow your own food?
And who is making money on their garden or farm? How much?
It's theoretical.
That must mean you're making $1.50 per hour. Beginning wage for farmers.
So do you guys have any, advice or I wish I would have done this 20 years ago? Or are you still figuring it out?
Well, I think one of the things that I could have done sooner was to reach out to local restaurants and find out what kind of things they were using in volume, and then find out what kind of price they would be willing to pay for something that was local and organic. It's also handy if you can find a restaurateur who will give you their price list so that you can see what they are currently paying. And, you can certainly pitch local food as being worth a little bit more money. And, if you run into a restaurateur who won't pay you any extra money for local food, don't ever go talk to them again. Go find somebody who will. Because you will. You'll find restaurants that will support you and buy your food. They'll appreciate that it's really fresh, that it doesn't, I get $8 a pound for salad mix. And I know that there are restaurants in our town that if I approached them, they would offer me $4 a pound for it.
Wow.
And I cannot make a living. I don't even really make a living at 8, to be honest. If I wanted to make more of a real living, I would need to sell it for 10 or 12. But I can get by with 8, and I can find restaurants that are willing to pay that much for it because the quality is better and it doesn't rot when they're walking.
Are you washing it
down? I rinse it. I don't want to get involved in, the legalities and all of that. So I just tell the restaurants that I've rinsed it. I do not claim that it's been washed because that's a legal term. So, if you can find something that you like growing or that you can grow, and that you can produce some volume of, because it's you can grow 12 heads of lettuce in your garden and, 20 beets or whatever, but you've got to find something that you can really plant intensively so that you have a volume of it. Otherwise, you're just not going to generate any real income.
So which vegetables or fruits do you find are give you the most profit for the least amount of effort?
Well, the salad mix has been a really good one for us, and we use, we also are somewhat mechanized, even though we have hand tools. We have this pinpoint seeder that puts down a lot of lettuce seed in these bands, so that out of a space the size of this tabletop, when it's producing well, we probably get 10 pounds of salad mix a week. So, and then other crops that people will pay a decent price for are beets and carrots. Carrots need a lot of weeding, and they can be a little bit problematic to get to germinate. Beets are a little bit easier. But we also, because we take good care of our soil, we can plant a carrot every 2 inches all over the top of this table. And, the beets have to be a little bit further apart. But crops that you can plant like high density plantings of, in terms of resources like Elliot Coleman, what's that original book that he, do you remember?
Oh, the Four Season Harvest?
No, it's not the Four Season Harvest. There's another one where he actually goes through all the plants and he talks about spacing and, anyway, just look it up. It's Elliot Coleman. And then there's a man up in Canada, Jean Fortier. He has a book and also a YouTube channel. He's called The Market Gardener. And he's also very much into this intensive kind of hand labor gardening that, you can start to replicate, if you replicate what he does, that's more or less what I do, and you can start to get into some of those income figures that, they're it's a very modest income for America, but it is barely sustainable if you love the lifestyle and want to grow your own food.
Well, I know young people when we do farm to school gardens and education, and some people ask the question, can you make a living? And generally, just like today, actually, I don't have any socks. And I always laugh and point out, yeah, that's kind of like farming. There's a certain aspect of it's really difficult to make a living. And there was actually, I'm going to say a young farmer, but I don't know how young he is, who's got the seed company right down here. Who spoke? Yeah, who's a really experienced farmer. I could tell how experienced he was if I offered him my onion collection. And, I met his family, and having raised a family, 4 children, and I did teach school, on the side, and worked at the farm after hours, and did the market every weekend. And it's really difficult to really make a living only farming, if you were really considering that. So I think that diversifying is probably important. Actually, I can't remember what your name is, but what is it?
Card?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so she grows herbs and things for teas, and then also for making salves, sells seeds. I bought some calendula seeds from her. I think there's different ways that you can find a market and also something you love and integrate that. And even the thing about here, it seems to me, is that you don't have that many restaurants very close by. You don't really have the kind of markets you even have in Taos. A lot of people in Taos who go to the Santa Fe market because you can sell things for more. And you'll spend your time going to markets all the time also, which is really lovely. I love going to a market, but it's time consuming. And so then if you look, kind of weigh all that out, one of the things we're doing is creating the Farmer Rancher Co-op, which means that and we're identifying the school district as one of our institutional markets. And we have 3,000 kids, and it takes 250 pounds of carrots to feed all those children a carrot or a serving of carrots, for the day. And so that's a pretty big farm, but if you have 4 different or 5 different farmers that are each you would be getting at a market. But the other thing that I proposed, and I heard Melinda, and I felt that strongly about after having a CSA for so many years and how much effort that took, but if a few farmers got together, that's what we are doing right now, is aggregating with farmers together to create a CSA, because if each farmer has to hold that capacity, it's really difficult. But the other thing is that there's somebody in Taos, I'm thinking about Gail Minton, who always had sometimes even a 15-member CSA.
Yeah,
a really, really small community-supported agriculture program, which meant maybe you grew food and just your 5 closest neighbors or 5 or 10 people in the neighborhood who valued local food, who had a little money to pay ahead, can basically help fund you to purchase seeds and to be a farmer. And so I think that smaller model CSA would be another thing that could be done, because getting the food directly to the people is your best market here than compared to growing for restaurants. And I'm assuming I haven't been up to the markets lately, like the one in Crestone or, the stores, like they probably are selling local when they can. But I just would put those 2 cents in. I don't know if there's still like a little farm stand kind of at the top of the road in Crestone, like before, I don't know, 2 years ago, I think. I saw that there were farms that came.
There is at the top of the road, but the Saturday market's not going in.
Yeah, but even growing like sunflowers and gladiolas are like a good cash crop. That you can always sell those flowers. People cannot resist them.
Have you guys, you're making cheese. Have you guys done any of that? Or just like not into the production of it?
I've never really found a product that to add value to be honest. I had some ideas and I needed access to a commercial kitchen and some facilities that weren't readily available, and somehow I've never really,
I have questions about your cheese. How do you get your milk certified, and what do you have to have?
Okay.
Maybe I could say
Hold on,
the
right.
answer.
Is anybody from the
Turn off
Honey
your
Garden here?
cell phone. It's not certified.
I'm making goat cheese myself and selling it at the farm market without any oversight as well.
Yeah,
So I'm wondering if you had cracked the egg or not.
So just to speak to that, about 7 years ago, Martha and I went down to meet with the agricultural inspector from New Mexico. And really nice guy. We met for about an hour. And he really was encouraging us to explore raw milk cheese, and that New Mexico was still legal. And then at the end of our conversation, he said, "Let me walk you out to your car." And so when we got into the parking lot, he said, "I will tell you that the federal government is actively trying to eliminate small producers. And it's just through regulations. And so if you try to abide by all the regulations, there's no way it would be we'd have to pair, we'd have to, there's no way we could make money. Yeah, because we'd have to cool the milk down to 40 degrees in less than 40 minutes. We'd have to have a totally stainless steel operation. We'd have to have a cement slab where we had the goats. There's no way we could do it, so, yeah.
So I would take a stab at your question about value added. And we were always growing like food for people and trying to increase the amount of food that we were producing. And in general, that's still what I'm working on. But we're looking at making some commissary items, like say, because I've been looking at the lunch program, and I don't really know. I know a little bit about here, but I don't know who's producing what. But like I designed an 88-cent burrito that was all local ingredients, including grass-fed and finished beef and local cheese, and they were in New Mexico pinto beans, but a healthy burrito that could be, if you made it $1,200 a day, which is like hiring, I think you could hire 4 people and pay them $200 a day to roll that many burritos and then still be able to afford to sell them at either at the lunch program, for like $2.50 or a coffee shop or wherever. But the point of it is sometimes I'm more interested in finding a way to work together and making kind of a commissary item. Like I just heard somebody say that, Crestone needs a bakery, and a bike shop. He said, so we need a bikery. That was the very witty farmer Ryan who was up here earlier. But in other words, finding, a place that you can that you maybe could have a consistent market and look at what is coming in from the outside. I'm assuming somebody's already growing microgreens here. Is that true?
Yeah.
Does anybody know?
In tests.
Well, no, in here.
Yeah, there's someone.
Yeah. And microgreen seeds are really, I think, really an idea to grow also. But I just wanted to throw out there the larger picture, of kind of building something more as a collaboration rather than what you can produce in your own kitchen. But I think once again, it depends on like what your labor is, what your desire is, what makes you happy. But you know, if there's not job opportunities in Crestone or in Moffat or all around here, then that's when all the young people leave.
Another thing that I think mentioned is a barter crop. And there are certain crops, like raspberries, that people love to barter for. And so when we grew, well, we still grow raspberries, but our production is a bit down. But raspberries you can barter for a lot of produce and goods. So that's a good, you could call it a barter crop or a cash crop too. So if you guys want to talk about berries, I'm happy to do that.
I'd like for you to, if you don't mind,
Yeah.
go a little further, especially into your varieties that you found successful and how you.
And what your soil conditions are.
Right, so we have a kind of a clay loam, and our pH is around 7. Raspberries like more on the acidic side, ideally like 6.5 to 6.8, but the fall bearing do the best. And it's the fall bearing that fruit later, like Autumn Britain, and Polana is a really good variety. And I know that New Mexico Agriculture Extension is recommending those 2 varieties for our bioregion. And then at the end of the season, once the canes have started to dry out, then you just mow the patch down. And then they come up and they fruit on the primal cane. And so you can get really good harvests in our climate. And with just a little bit of soil amendments, and it doesn't take a lot of effort to grow raspberries. I mean, we did like it.
So I've grown Polana and I have a lot of trouble with them actually producing berries before the freezes knock them out.
And so where are you?
In Crestone.
You know what you might want to look into is, have you seen those high tunnel hoop houses?
Uh-huh.
You know that people are growing very successfully in high tunnels in areas like ours that are prone to those. I mean, we can get a freeze. Last year we had a freeze June 20th, and that really knocked back our raspberries. And then we can have freezes in early September. So those high tunnel hoop houses can really help.
Just I want to mention, I'm putting this together now. You mentioned that raspberries like acidic soil, and my last partner and I grew loads of raspberries because he would go to the coffee shop and get all spent coffee grounds and go dump them all over this raspberry patch a few times a year, and those raspberries were just amazing. So that's just a nice cheap amendment.
Yeah, I have a few questions. One is about, is there a kind of a code of politeness in terms of pricing when you go to a farmer's market? And, you try to kind of, when you have same products, kind of agree on the prices?
It depends a little bit on the farmer's market, but yes, there's a little bit of a code of honor. I mean, certainly I see it as being kind of bad karma to go into a farmer's market and undercut everybody's price. Because I hope by now that everybody is aware that any farmer is not making a fortune regardless of the price that they're asking for their product. And I also think that it's fine as a farmer to go into a market and feel that the product that you have is worth more than what other people in the market are selling their product for. And if you have a justification for why that's so, and you need that money, I would encourage you as a farmer to ask for it. Like if everybody's selling, turnips at $4 a bunch, and for whatever reason, like maybe in my case, mine are biodynamically grown, and I think I harvested them at a better size, and blah, blah, blah. Maybe I'll ask 5 or even 6, and I think that just kind of elevates the whole, people don't have to buy them, they go buy them from the person who's selling them for $4. But to go into a market and undercut other people, people, I think is a horrible thing to do, honestly, because, you know, I also think, I've seen people do that, you know, like they have some bumper crop of something and they think they're gonna come into the market and, you know, sell all theirs for $4 a pound, even though everybody else is asking for $6, and they're hoping that they're gonna sell out because they have too much of that crop. But the truth of the matter is if they sold theirs at $6, they'd probably sell almost the same amount of product and they get $2 more a pound for it. That kind of mentality, just consumers don't react to that. They don't respond to that.
People like beautiful produce. So if you make beautiful bunches and if you have a high value product, you always harvest early in the morning and cool it down and refrigerate it and, you know, follow good harvest guides. And make a nice display, yeah. Like, even though people, you know, may complain about the price of something and everybody wants a deal, I feel like people they want to buy your integrity. They want to have that experience.
Well, and another thing I really feel like is that food is really underpriced, undervalued, generally. You know, and it's like the amount of work, I mean, and farmers know this, that like they're barely making money, but everybody needs to eat. So it would be nice if we could increase what we are paying for food, particularly to people who deserve it. You know, and it's, you know, I know nobody's, you know, we're all very cash strapped, and, you know, we're looking for deals, but food is not where we should be cutting corners and skimping. And if anything, like, I want to pay my farmers the most out of, you know, my budget for the month. And I just wanted to say that I did try to reach out to a county extension agent to talk about value-added products and the rules in this county around that stuff, and he couldn't make it. But that was the thing I wanted to bring here, and if you want to do that sort of thing, yeah, talk to your county extension agent.
Where did you?
I think it's in Alamosa, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
So one other thing, if you don't want to talk to your county extension agent and pick up your relevant, no, just joking. You know, there is, like what Chris said, that the extension agent in New Mexico said about trying to eradicate small producers. That's happening like right now, like in a pretty strong pace. I'm not saying right here in our little community, but nationwide. I think it's a really good time to have a CSA and to stay, because, and that's the other thing that you can do with your dairy or with other things that you know, that you could ask. If you ask the question, you have to be prepared to get the answer, you know. And so I know, like with actually producing for the school district, we all took food safety training. You know, I think that's available here, probably through, I'm thinking the Food Hub or through Rio Grande Farms or somewhere, and it doesn't hurt to take that, because I looked at the RFPs at the local schools here, and they're less strict than New Mexico as far as what you just have to say, you know, that you follow good procedures, you bleach your tools, it's not very complicated. And so the one thing about selling produce for a high price, I try to convince farmers to sell some things at a high price, like sunflowers and gladiolas and salad mix, and then grow other things that are for the schools, for the kids, that you can harvest at the end of the season, you know, a bunch of carrots, and you'll get maybe less than if you were at the market. You can't sell 5,000 pounds of carrots at the market, like in 1 week or, you know, in a short time. But if you know you have that market, you don't have to go out to look for it. You can put your energy into growing carrots, figure out how you're going to do it, where you're going to store them. You know, your labor, you harvest them. I mean, there's labor in weeding, but if you actually do proper bed preparation and then weed cultivation, then you're pretty good. And then you have one crop, and I'm just stuck on carrots, but that then you are able to focus on and sell all at one time. So there's, I guess, a lot of different ways to look at it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think what Mike is talking about too is like if you grow, you know, like a large crop that's going to go all in one place, there's no time or expense related to marketing. So, you know, it comes down to number crunching, and there are I mean, I don't know what they do now, but you know, years ago at the organic conferences, somebody would always hand out like these worksheets where you could break down like how much you were making per pound for crops that you were growing. My guess is now there's some app on a computer, but and it's a little bit time consuming to do that kind of thing. But if you do a little bit of it, you start to get a sense of what's making you money and what's not, and it's valuable if you're really serious about turning it into a paying profession or career. You know, to take into account all the different aspects of what it costs you to grow a crop and sell it.
Let me ask you a little bit about the school thing.
Pardon me?
May I ask you a little more about the school lunch thing that you do?
Sure.
I'm assuming you have some kind of commercial kitchen that you do this in?
You mean that we bunch
You
and...
prepare the lunches in?
Oh, yeah, that we prepare the lunches, yes.
Okay. And how do you handle the seasonal? I mean, here,
Well, if
6
we-
months of the year, we can't really grow much.
Well, so
And that's the season when school is in, and the summer when we
So
can't
we-
grow much, they don't,
yeah,
there's no school.
we build a lot of meals out of food. I don't know if anybody heard Melinda's talk earlier, but like beef shepherd's pie, I'm going to just say that's a favorite. And you use carrots, potatoes, what else do you use? Onions, cabbage, and beef. So in other words, you can store potatoes, carrots, onions, winter squash, beets, which aren't super popular yet, but you know, those things you can store, and that's actually what we all need to be eating, along with either sprouting microgreens or greens in the winter. Like we need to be, I think, directing our own diets towards what grows where we live, because this is where we do live. And so that's what we're doing also with the lunch program. But on the other hand, like romaine lettuce, we serve, salads. If we don't have a farmer growing it, and there's not enough production in greenhouse, because even like high tunnel productions like Melinda's get lower in the winter, like we order from Veritable Vegetable. And now what I'm looking to do is order from southern New Mexico. I would rather get it from a farmer's co-op further south in New Mexico, which is probably your closest warmer market. Just, so that's what a school lunch provider, a restaurant person, grocery stores have the choice to do. And so I think as a community, we need to really look at how to support our local farmers and then reduce our carbon footprint and train people how to eat. You had a question.
I was just wondering about budgeting, and like what are some really good tools or habits that you guys have of, when you are making money or getting money coming in, how do you look at that compared to the labor costs that you're putting in, and how does that factor in? Like, do you have an end of the year kind of look at all of this stuff and figure out what you're going to be doing? Talk about that.
That's a great question. I don't know what you do, Chris, but at the start of every season, we actually make a budget. We figure out, we have like I'm really just, I'm not a computer-based person, so I literally have like a piece of graph paper, and I have every bed on the farm that I've got, and I know what I had in it the previous year. And we do a lot of crop rotation. That's another way that we get that kind of income. We plant like at least 2 crops in every bed, sometimes 3.
I think you just described the major problem right now in that and it's mostly young people have no access to land or the economy to build a farm, and that the age of farmers and ranchers is, increasing. They're getting older.
They're all 65.
Yeah, and so I think that's the big question right now. I have a couple ideas. I have a young farmer on Hell Ortiz who grew 5,000 pounds of carrots 2 years in a row for the lunch program, and he has 2 little children and a wife, and he is leasing land on a land grant, and he makes deals with people, to grow on their land. Actually, that farmer Ryan, who was here earlier, is not growing, and that, is honestly a crime to have a serious farmer who doesn't have land. But, it's kind of the love that I don't know if you're born with or you discover it. because it's definitely not like exactly on the top of, I think, people's career choice, like in high school or something. But right now, young people don't have access to the land. There's people who have land and they maybe have a big house and they might be aging. My idea is we could bring on, like, look at what our resources are, some of these bigger pieces of land that people own. I think there's a whole bunch of this in Crestone where people have also big houses with dwindling families. You could actually make some kind of agreements where you have young people who come to help farm the land and start to make those bigger houses into kind of some co-housing. And you could even it could be an investment opportunity. So there's a lot of, I've almost done that a couple of times. I haven't seen it successfully yet, but I think in the future, it's what's going to happen. And I think because if I look around, I don't know, okay, how many people in the room are over 50? Wait, how many people in the room are not over 50? Okay, so there's like 5 people. And I don't know what everyone's economic situation is, but I really think that we need to start looking at how we can diversify. If we have any investments, if we have any holdings, how do we help move that over to the next generation? Like here in the valley, Ernie New inherited his potato farm from his father. Okay, in 2000, we bought some scrubby sagebrush land in Cerro, New Mexico. I believe we spent maybe 8,000 an acre, which you can't buy anything for $8,000 an acre. And I had to drive 30 minutes to town every day because I couldn't get closer to Taos and have water. But we started with sagebrush and built a farm, and now it's 2020. 20 years later, we have a really successful CSA that's probably been successful for, 10 years or 15 years. But you got to be out there and cut the sage and start the process. And I think that's what we're looking at. There's actually grants that I know people are working on and USDA loans for young people to get land. And I think it's probably the biggest question right now is how do we get new farmers trained and then help move them onto land and resources that they need to be able to be productive. Because it's definitely not a hobby, it's like it's a necessity. It's right? That we need to.
Well, I think, it's kind of I hate to say it, but I think your thinking is spot on. It's like virtually impossible to do what you're talking about.
And I'm thinking of older farmers like me.
Well, I think for anybody to be able to afford the land, afford a house, and have some minimal mechanical, implements available to them. If you go someplace like maybe Missouri or Arkansas where you can still buy land for $2,000 to $5,000 an acre, maybe it becomes somewhat possible. But, it's just so kind of, to me, symptomatic of what is so broken in our culture right now. And, I don't want to, turn into a pessimist or be depressed about it, but it's really, Micah's right, it's a huge problem. And, I think somehow we have to envision some future that we don't yet have at our fingertips. And I do think, it's going to come out of some form of collaboration and connection, but it's just, and also, the dominant model in our society, which I think Micah or in agriculture, which Micah kind of alluded to, is that, either you get bigger or you get out. And, that's one of the reasons why I mentioned him earlier. That's one of the reasons why I like Jean Fortier, the market gardener in Canada, is because I love his vision of these little 2-acre farms that are essentially run with hand labor and a walk behind, tractor, and they're very human scale. And you're talking about, I would so love to live in a world where there were little 2-acre farms everywhere that fed people. Mm-hmm. And, we're of course being fed this line that, that small scale agriculture like that couldn't possibly feed the world. But the truth of the matter is that kind of agriculture could feed the world, and it could also sequester all the carbon that we release into the atmosphere. It'd be like such a win-win. But of course, you know, it doesn't make anybody a lot of money, so.
You know, another thing, and I'm curious, that I feel like also maybe a problem for some of us is having a partner when starting a farm. Did you all have partners when you started your farms? Did you? You didn't? Well, good for you. But I know Nora's like kind of on your own, and I think it could be really daunting when you're that way. You know?
Okay,
So
well,
find a husband.
Well, Jay, I just wanted to be, like, I didn't always have a husband and a farm. I farmed before I got married, and then I, you know, I mean, maybe people think I don't have a farm just because I have a cafe also. Like, I have almost an acre of production there, plus all the school farms, but I'm not saying it's easy, but I'm just saying, you know, you can get a farming partner that's another person who loves to farm, who can help or be, you know.
That's what I'm looking for. So I have the land and the infrastructure, somebody come and do the labor and we'll split the.
Like, you don't need a man to farm.
No, you don't need a man.
But you know what, I see, like, but it's harder. I'm 63, and it's a lot harder for me. I mean, I remember when I was young and naive, I dug like a half an acre patch for a corn patch by hand.
I needed meat when I was younger to pick it up and go.
Right.
Now that I've built it all, take it forward. Yeah. I just something from my education, my ag degree. My ag economics teacher said, your rancher and farmer are the only business people that buy retail and sell wholesale. So you have to take that dynamic and apply it to, you know, so you're already starting way behind from any other business person. You know,
Well, that's why I said earlier, I said you cannot afford to sell at wholesale prices.
That's right.
Well, it's almost 4, so does anybody have any burning questions?
Are we into overtime now?
Yeah,
Are we into overtime?
yeah. This is a riveting talk. Anything else? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much.